Grown Man Shit, episode 4.
So are you like the official intro guy?
Hey, I mean, actually, just I gotta give the stage. You got the mic.
Yeah, you got the presentation down pat today, man.
Put all this pressure on me.
Sit back with my popcorn. I'm the audience.
I was like, okay, we're gonna let Wayne be the intro guy. Like,
I get ready.
Nah, but on Grown Man Shit today, we'll be discussing. I don't even know if I'm looking in the camera, but we'll be discussing how important is charisma for a man. Is it something every man should strive to develop? Is it? It's a nice to have. It's like a beard, right? But not required. At least that's what she tells me. No, I'm kidding. Or just how does that actually impact it? What is it? Is it real, or is it just you have a nice personality? Like, what is that? And then we're gonna be talking about focus or attention and how that impacts and influences everything in a man's life. And yeah.
So I'll start with what charisma is for each of us.
There you go. That's where I was gonna go.
Hit it off then.
In my world, you have the idea of charisma. To me, matches with natural magnetism. Like, some dudes were born with that. People just flock to them. Some people have to, build their game. Like, okay, this is what I do to get my results. Charisma to me is the natural part of that. The part that you doesn't need training. You don't have to think about. You walk into a room and this is just who you are from birth. Where that natural animal magnetism. And there's an argument that says that over time you can develop and build that muscle now. So guys who start off as ugly ducklings and end up, with that magnet, maybe it is just confidence. Once you reach a point where you're confident in yourself, that automatically equates to charisma and magnetism. What do you think?
So what do you think the purpose of it is? What's the function of it?
It's the peacock. It's the feathers. Charisma is the feathers. It's what we do to attract mates.
So you think charisma is for mates?
You keep hearing the magnetism drawing in.
Charisma is magnetism. It's for now. There's charisma can overlap when you're going into business and you walk into a room to lead the room as far as business goes as well. But it's all the same world. You're doing all of that to put your feathers up so she can see how pretty you are. At the end of the day, it's like, I want to be the one who walks into the room and all eyes are on me because I want the pick of the litter. If I walk in with Dwayne, I need the eyes on me. I need to make sure my feathers are brighter or at least as bright as his so that he doesn't get all the good chicks.
So is it so it still sounds like, so it is more centered around getting women though, for you, the way you think about it?
I think evolutionary wise, that's where it comes from.
So is it, going back to the magnetism thing, is it something that causes people to come to you, or are you doing something to people?
Charisma attracts.
Okay.
In my mind, charisma attracts. You don't have to do anything when you walk in the room. You just walk in the room. And it doesn't matter whether it's a girl or a guy. Biologically, evolutionary wise, it's all for procreation at a chemical level. In reality, how we played out in our societies, if you have charisma, you walk into a room, everybody knows whether they're a man or a woman. And they have conversations with you based on your charisma. And they slip into beta or alpha dog status based on a position, based on your charisma. You feel me?
Okay. I'm processing what you're saying. I'll be processing. But you have any thoughts? No, I'm not saying we just pause and then.
And I'm not saying this is gospel. I really want to hear the input.
No, I have some.
But yeah,
I have already. It's funny because I'm going to do a workshop centered around this as I mentioned. So
okay.
I have a technical definition, but I do know it's one of those things that is experienced, and so people aren't oftentimes necessarily putting it in words like this is it and this is more of an experience, and then people are like he's charismatic or he's not, and the only thing they're judging that off of is what did I feel like around that person. Particularly women, right? That's how they're going to measure everything about a man typically. How did he make me feel? You got it or you don't, based on did he make me feel this or not. If I felt good, then he's in this category. If he made me feel awkward or creepy or like you're in a different.
Yeah.
So they're just gauging off a feeling, whereas men will more aim to articulate their feeling into things that you can tell another man. Okay, so this is how you make her feel, like So I'm listening for just to see, but I have an actual technical thing that I had to come out, and I don't want to hear your thoughts on what it is.
I said the professor, the best for last.
He said
classes.
You pulled it up too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm big on
what the word is.
Yeah, definition and everything. So really good, the magnetism in there. So charisma, compelling attractiveness or charm that can inspire devotion in others. Ooh, I like
devotion.
This.
Yep. We talked about this.
The worship.
Thou shalt have no other God before me.
Hey, there it is. She enchanted the guest with her charisma, coming from a woman as well. Interesting. Second definition, a divinely conferred power or talent.
That's the one that goes into.
Yeah, Lewis was saying more that.
I'll check on my thoughts, which I do like. I like. First of all, I like the element of the magnetism, like that charisma is reflected out there in the audience. The attractiveness, drawing others in. How I view it, if like a chemical or scientific breakdown for me, it registers as masculine expression. Your personality, your character, being able to demonstrate that. And I see it as, I heard you say something natural, yes, and as it lives for me, it is developed in a way because most of us don't come out freely expressed, nothing to heal, just ourselves. And as for the world of men especially, as we get comfortable, and I can say the same thing for women because they're in their world of where women navigate society, as we get comfortable with ourselves, as I call it, the masculine expression, the what is your character, who am I, like Lewis was talking to you, walk into a room, there's a certain way, certain swag, a certain sway, your language, your words, your humor, all of that comes out. And what I'm loving about this discussion, because I'd never had it distinguished, how it actually, I've always liked captivates, how it actually captures or draws in others through attractiveness, magnetism, because we like those that we like, those that are like us, and things of that nature. So when the positive traits, the fun traits, how does a woman feel, especially feminine, is going to follow, well, what is life around this masculine, following this masculine, everything aspects of that. That's my thoughts. Professor.
The glasses. I'm never wearing these glasses again. I had an eye exam today. I did like, yeah, good.
Hey, fresh ass eye exams,
right? I usually get those big black wraparound plastic things. Gave you Malcolm X glasses.
Malcolm X. I'll take it.
The Kingsman.
Good company.
The Kingsman. There you go.
Say, manners maketh man. All right.
I'd actually start with framing it in a question, right? So when we think about, if you think about somebody that you'd be like, I think that person's charismatic, what words would you use if you were describing them, right? You'd say what? Like in real time?
Warm, approachable.
Approachable, confident.
Right.
Engaging, communicative.
Engaging, communicative.
Inviting.
Which are all descriptions of things that you'd experience after after encountering them,
Okay, got it. Then the only word that would come is confident. It would be that of confidence. Before you have a conversation, before you walk over to them, whether it's a man or a woman, if they walk in with charisma, you notice them from the other side of the room. You're like, that's somebody I want to have a conversation with. You know?
Your question was asking the after or taking the
Well, I just asked what words come to your mind if you were to put adjectives to it, and the words that came to mind were things you could only know after you met them. So it sounds like charisma is it's not, you recognize it after interacting with them rather than before. But if it was magnetism,
that's why I was saying the confidence side, because you can tell somebody walks into a room by how they walk into a room. You don't have to have an interaction with them before you walk across the room. You can see by their swag that they walk in and own the room.
For me, it was the inviting openness. It's going to be things in their energy. I'd say those are the things that draw you in to have the interaction. But the inviting portion, open body language, how they're carrying themselves. For me, those are things that are going to indicate the charisma is obvious from jump. I wouldn't say, because the subcommunication, nonverbal communication is going to come before we even say words. To that degree, when they come in the room, there's something communicating. The person not making eye contact, off to the distance, or closed off body language, no charisma, nothing drawing in, not open. I wouldn't say that, I don't think you need to interact directly to detect or experience charisma.
An example of that is, do y'all know that Obama picture where he's getting out the car? He's getting out that black car, and he has that one leg out, and he's getting out, and he's looking at whatever he's looking at. That picture right there sums up charisma and swag all in that one picture.
We gotta have an editor throw the picture in there.
Yeah, we're gonna throw the picture in. But it's, you can tell without knowing anything about him. His level of confidence, his level of assurance, his level of engagement. He's not looking down, he's not looking off, he's looking out.
Okay. And so that's one question I had, which is the what comes to your mind when you think of a charismatic person, because that's important when you're putting the thing in context. So the way I defined it was, I'll start with, I don't remember where I read this in a book, but I don't remember where the person got it. But it says communication has two roles, essentially, to either give information or educate, we'll say, or to incite a certain positive feeling, or to entertain. So we just put educate and entertain, right? So we're going to take those to the extremes. We're going to take full-on education, no entertainment, which is just like a boring professor or something, right? We're going to put full-on entertainment, no education, which is like a clown. I wouldn't even put a comedian in there. Comedians are doing a little bit of both. And you'll understand why people would consider comedians charismatic. So like a class, like just always goofing around, nothing too serious. And so when I thought it through, charisma seems to be, and I don't know the full ratio, I mean, who can ever say, but it seems to be a person's ability to educate and entertain when they're engaging with someone, but they have to have the intent of having the person have a positive experience. So if they are educating and entertaining, but their intent is not, it's kind of like, whatever, that charisma won't shine. So it seems to me, and especially if I reflect on like my own communication style, it's always some important shit, then a joke, and if I'm important, then a joke, like all the time, back and forth, right? And it's when I think about somebody else that would be considered charismatic. If they're too far in one or the other, then you're either just goofy, but not quite charismatic, or you're serious, but not, and so it seems to be a dance between those two things. And so an example would be, let's say you're fucking ordering some food, you're hungry, the waitress comes up or waiter comes up, hey, what can I get for you today? I'm like, you actually have the answer. You may, let me think, you may say like, let me know, okay, what you got that's for free, right? And you may start with something that's more playful, obviously. And it's like, they laugh and then like, give me a sec, I'll look at the menu, and I'll be right with you. Okay, cool. So it's a dance between, I could have been like, give me a second, look at the menu. Or I could say, what you got for free? Ha ha ha, and just stick there. But there seems to be a balance between sticking to the objective of the conversation, but not being too rigid, right? And so it's being able to, if I had to put the definition again, educate and entertain with the intent of keeping, the words exactly was be playful and educate while having the intention of making the other person have a good experience. So yeah, that's what I came up with, and I tried to pressure test that and try to think of somebody who's charismatic that's not doing both those things, or I could say those three things. Now the difference between mine and y'all's is that charisma, when I think about like looking at somebody, if I have zero context of who they are and I don't see them interact with anybody at all, I don't know if I could say that's a charismatic person. I could say they have swagger, which is slightly different to me, or they have confidence in body language. Mm-hmm. But to say that they're charismatic without ever seeing them talk to anybody or ever talking to them, I don't know if I could judge that. Yeah, I'd have to get an example of how.
See, the only challenge I have in your definition is intention. Mm-hmm. I don't think you have to have pure intentions to be charismatic. By all accounts, Hitler was charismatic.
You mean pure intention?
How did you describe it?
Said the intent to make them feel good.
Yeah, you have an intent to make somebody feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know that intention matters for charisma.
What's a counterexample of somebody being charismatic?
I'm trying to think of somebody.
That is.
I said Hitler, but Hitler had intention to make his followers feel good. Just not anybody else.
But that's an example. You're trying to do something and sort of joke. But I was saying that was an example just now, right? You were thinking about Hitler. You were kind of beeline or
right, and I said something funny,
and then you went back. But that could have went completely the other way, where you're like, no, Hitler is right, or it could be you're just completely goofy with no base, right? And so that would be an example just now. But I am curious because I'm like, the reason I said it like that is because I don't see, the only way you're moving people without force is if they like you. Or unless you have a very common goal that they really want. Obviously if you have both. But it's very hard to move a person that doesn't like you. And so if the intent is not to have them feel good, I don't know how you could be perceived as charismatic. That's why I'm asking for a counter.
I don't know that the intent is that they feel good. The reality is that they feel good around you. In the world of Hitler, and I hate talking about Hitler like this, but when he was talking to his followers, he was targeting them against something, giving them something to hate.
Okay.
There are obvious examples in our current political system where you could do that, where they're focused on who you hate and fear to empower you as opposed to building something with you.
I would argue I think it might be stuck on the intent of leaving them feeling good, because by the definition of charisma being attractiveness or likeness, just in that space, even to your point, what that focus was on is those people's aligned goals or something that would build up the world
Right.
comfortable. So not necessarily that, oh, you feel good. You can even look at like give you value, but there's something that is, even if it's talking about interjecting a joke, there's like have it be socially accepted, have it go along with, that I think intention, maybe not actively I want to leave them feeling good, there is a socially acceptable, there's not a blatant fuck how you take it, like
Right.
say this.
I don't think
So-
people like that get classified in the charismatic role after leaving that. Man, that guy was charismatic the way he told me to fuck up. Like, you know what I mean?
Son of a bitch, it's funny as hell.
Right, like, so that's why, and I thought long about this. That's why I'm genuinely hoping you may have a counterexample to
But-
pressure test it.
Here's another thought. A person has charisma,
Okay.
which allows people to hear their message. Hitler was not the first person to speak out or speak up for the master race and out against everybody else. He wasn't the first person to do that. It wasn't what he was saying that mattered. It was the fact that he had charisma that got people to follow him.
Okay.
So it didn't matter whether he educated and entertained. There were people already saying on both sides of that equation in the German world at that time. He actually got people to listen because he was charismatic. I would say the same thing about Trump. Trump is very, coming from New York, Trump was very charismatic in New York. Anybody who knew anything about Trump in New York knew you couldn't trust him.
Okay.
You know, there were people who didn't like him, but he had a way of communicating with people and interacting with people where he walked in the room and he owned the room.
But why would he?
So people believed him when he said, I have all this stuff that's worth these millions of dollars. Banks believed him because he had charisma.
So I'm asking.
His intention wasn't to do anything for them.
I never said anything about doing anything for them.
His intention wasn't even to make them feel good.
Really?
His intention was to get what he wanted.
Without making them feel good.
It didn't matter whether they felt good or not to him.
Really?
I 100% believe that. Did not matter. It
So
does not matter.
I'm curious, how can you move people who have their own self-interest to go with your self-interest without making them like you?
Liking you and feeling good aren't the same thing. And
Well, if it's
I
tied
can,
to
you don't have to like me, especially in that world, for me to play on your greed or your fear.
What?
I can make you money.
But that has nothing to do with charisma. That's just aligned goals.
Right, because I mean, that's why I'm saying he didn't care about liking them. He didn't care whether they liked him or not. He went in saying, I can make you money, I can provide this for you. It wasn't about liking him. His charisma had them believe he could do it.
Which is, well, how is that possible if they don't like him? Then what is the charisma doing?
You don't have to like somebody to believe they can do something.
Then I'm trying to figure out how does charisma fit in this.
I don't have to like you to make money off you.
But you were talking about charisma. So this isn't even about necessarily making money. We're talking about how his
The charisma is fostering that magnetism that says, I'm going to walk in the room and people are just naturally going to follow me. People are naturally going to believe what I say. I can attract people to me without doing anything. I don't have to communicate, because what you were saying earlier, charisma happens when you walk in a room, not necessarily after the point of communication. I don't have to talk to you or listen to you to know that you're charismatic.
Which I am saying I don't know how you would, unless you can give me an example.
And you're saying that it's a matter of liking somebody. And
Well, so let's get to the base of what, because that's why I asked you earlier, what is the function of charisma? It has to have a function. Right? What is the purpose of it? To do what?
to attract.
Okay. So how is attracting relevant if you've already, like, to do the business deal, right? You're already at a point of interaction. There's nothing to attract at that point. You're already interacting. So what?
The attraction came to actually get me in the room. The charisma comes that actually gets me in the room to have the conversation. The charisma comes so that I can blind you from reality to do what I want you to do.
How would you do that?
By feeding, that's where the communication comes in at that point. I'm communicating with you what you want to hear.
But what is that? What is that doing for a person?
I guess what I'm saying is communication and charisma are two separate things.
What is charisma?
You have to be good at communicating to get certain things. And that's where that balance is of, okay, you have to find a balance between humor and education and all that. That's good communication.
Mm-hmm.
Charisma is alpha dog energy.
With no communication.
With no communication.
Really? So how could you communicate without communicating?
You know what I'm saying? Body language.
That's not communication.
That is communication. Self-communication. Non-verbal.
Okay, so even without body language, you ever met somebody where their energy you could just feel? Before you even said no, you just felt their energy walk into a room.
I hear what you're saying. That's not possible. I just don't classify that as charisma. I don't see how that's... Man, that person I've never met and never seen talk to anybody who's charismatic. With no data whatsoever other than their aura.
Saying I fall into that world of where, like, yeah, there are certain people who they don't need to say anything when they walk in the room.
Okay.
And you can just feel, okay, that's the person in charge.
I've had that happen, but I don't think that person would say that I was charismatic. Maybe, again, swagger would be or more like an external, okay, or alluring, or seemed intriguing. I just don't see, especially from what you're describing.
Swagger is more presentation to me.
So what are you going off then?
Charisma is, if you take the body language out and all of that, swagger falls into that same body language piece. Charisma is energy. It's that alpha dog energy. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to. You can have your back to the door and somebody will walk in the room and know that that person is in charge.
And that's charisma to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to touch on what you shared there. I heard like layers from the entertain and educate aspect. For some reason, how you broke that down, I found examples for myself.
Mm-hmm.
One, first, early on, younger, I can definitely identify getting game, interacting with women in group settings, my guys, group of girls, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Common theme of being too funny, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can think to my later years in education, expansion, getting my personality. I'm such an intellectual, finding that is my thing, sapiosexual. I value intelligence before I'm even connected or attracted. And there's an element where if that's the constant, that is especially with feminine, that is so monotone, it's so straight to, there's no relaxation to it. And I find in my maturity and confidence, again, coming back to masculine, I can be geeked out on an intellectual topic and I'm still talking silly shit and humor in the mix of it. And
Pulling her hair now.
that is mixed in.
Pulling the pigtails.
Physics.
Facts, right? Entertain and educate. But yeah, that context, I like what I hear in the thought power applied to understand and break down to quantify. Because especially as we dive into the conversation, getting different perspectives, it's hard to get what translates that the other person can palpably have that experience and register. So you broke down something where I can look at my life. Oh shit! Well, here's where it was. That is, especially in regards to men in the game. That was the other aspect. Is when you first said it, I thought about the technical training of it. A lot when PUA, pickup art, all that stuff first started, it was explaining to guys how to be charismatic. Right. Don't always be so straight. Mix it up. I think you said that at the beginning. Even mix it up with something back and forth. It's never all to one, all to the other. And having that science, this is how you do the thing, process, beat, bop, turn, switch, and the just being of, which is even what I hear you speaking to, Lewis, is the energetic or the naturalness. There's not so much effort. There's a balance of that, and that, I can definitely come back to definition, is going to be attractive. It's going to be likable. And how you were pointing out to the intention of, I see it as a passive intent because I think it's socially adopted. All of the examples, Hitler, Trump, whatever, anything, or just a guy trying to get laid or whatever, there's a context of, I want this agenda to go for, I want people to move, I want things to happen socially. It's going to require you to like, and inside of that, the charisma, the attractiveness drawing people in is your ability to educate them and entertain them in a mix. That's
And then I didn't come up with that, right? It was as I said, I referenced, I don't remember the exact, I think the book is over there, but I don't remember where they got it from. But just basically, I was like, oh shit.
right.
That's and I've been thinking on what is it to be charismatic? Like, what is actually occurring? And then when I think about, like, what is a person's intent when they're interacting with a person? If it's purely classroom, boom, boom, boom. You do have teachers that are naturally, as they say, charismatic. But if you actually think about, if somebody were to say, what's the difference between this teacher and this teacher? It just loosens up, which is what they're trying to say, that it's not one-dimensional education. It's he mixes in the playfulness in the education. So I'm having fun. That's really what people are talking about. But if it's like, I'm in this class and he's just a clown, it's like
dangerous.
See, that goes back to what I was saying. Is that charisma or is that communication?
Well, charisma is communication. It's communicating in a particular way. Remember, it's merging.
See, being a good communicator does not necessarily mean you have charisma. It means you're a good communicator.
It's a certain type. If you're educating somebody, you're communicating. Like
No. I understand, but being a good entertaining communicator, and the way you described it, being that kind of a communicator, because to me that's a good communicator, when you can educate somebody with a story. Comedians are great communicators. Right. They fit into that paradigm where I'm giving you information and I'm entertaining you.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily lend itself to charisma, because I can be on stage and be a great communicator and have zero charisma because I walk off the stage and it does not exist. I don't have it like charisma comes and goes. Once you have it, you have it.
So if, let's say, somebody communicates charismatically on stage, and in their general life,
see, I would even clarify that they communicate well on stage.
Is that for you to decide or for the audience to decide? So if
the audience, absolutely the audience.
So if we survey them, and they're like, it was a very charismatic, because he's doing the charismatic things. Let's say he's doing the formula, and they're both laughing and at the same time. Their experience of the information, because it's not just the info, it's also your experience of the info.
Right.
Because if I give you words and I'm boring as fuck, because I can communicate it through story, I can communicate through straight raw like words, and I can do both, and then throwing a self-deprecating joke midway, not necessarily because it even adds to anything, but it just adds to the vibe versus just raw data.
Right.
And so that ups engagement because like, I laughed. But this is not a conscious, okay, inserted a joke in 12 minutes into the speech. It's like when the speech is done, you're like, how did I feel about that? Oh, okay. Like that's how most people are thinking about, what did I learn and how did I feel? They could have learned stuff, but it was like,
it was boring. I fell asleep. Blah blah blah. Otherwise, that was wonderful. That was entertaining. I got something out of it. Made me laugh. Da 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 da. They would evaluate the communication. I don't know that people would say he's charismatic on stage.
Well, we'd have to. I can't think of it. I do think you can be like I do think people have sectional. You can be more charismatic in more contexts than other people, but you do have people that, particularly if they're like liquored up or just in particular contexts,
right, agree,
are very.
There are
different.
people who are liquored up or drugged up and their energy shifts.
Well, I'm not even going to use the escape, the caveat of the liquor, but like, this is what's called, you mentioned the PUA days, but they used to have something called situational confidence, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're in a position where that's you're around your buddies, because you have dudes who are just around their friends, they'd say, oh, that's the man, he's charismatic, put him in front of a girl. Right, and so there was another piece to the definition. I think it had to do with unapologetically being yourself. I just don't remember how to fit it. I have it written down somewhere, but and I don't have my phone on me. But there was a piece in there. Oh yeah, this is what the final piece was: doing all of the stuff we discussed without an attachment to the reaction. Mm-hmm. And so it's one thing. Because I was like, there's another piece, I just couldn't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that.
And so it's one thing, it's not that I need you to enjoy it, but I enjoy me. Mm-hmm. You might not like me, and that's okay. But I want you to have a good time when you're around me. Like, it's not like, I don't think anybody goes into it where it's like, fuck your life, bro. Like, I don't really give a fuck if you have a good time or not. Like, if you're hanging with somebody you want to be around, like, I'd assume, man, I want everybody to have a good time. I'm having a good time. Why would I not? So, a charismatic person's vibe that I can't think of a person who's charismatic who's apathetic to the experience of the people who he's around. Otherwise, why tell a joke? Like, is it purely just self-indulgent?
There's a lot of people. That's absolutely. It's not about the audience. It's about the endorphin rush I get by controlling other people, by getting them to laugh. Going back to what I was saying, even about the Trump and the Hitlers, they didn't care if somebody liked them. You said the word and wanted to point to it. They just wanted you to believe in them.
That's slightly different. Now
yes, it is.
That's slightly different.
And I can be. No, if I can be charismatic, I walk into a room that's charismatic. Mm-hmm. With my intention, mm-hmm. I want people to believe in me so they follow me. Mm-hmm. I can 100% be charismatic.
That's not the function. That can be a byproduct. That you don't have to have one intent. But if you think that you're going to have the goal of not giving a fuck whether they like you or not, and just be solely focused on them believing you, and still
believing
give off that
in me,
believing in you, whatever, with zero intent of them having a good experience with you, and think that's going to work and you're going to come off as charismatic. I don't see how that's possible. Okay, I want you to believe in me.
I don't. Whether they have a good time is irrelevant to a lot of the people who would be considered charismatic today that have a large group of followers.
Like
because going back to Trump,
you don't think Trump supporters like him?
No, they believe in him. It doesn't matter. Some of them like them, but that's irrelevant.
Okay.
Because he doesn't care whether they like him or not.
It doesn't matter if it's not like an attachment to I need everybody to like me. It's the intent when I'm communicating to you I might not get it, but my intent is to get.
And my point is, his intent is not to get them to like him, but to get him to believe in him.
How can they believe in something that they're not on board in?
Because I feed into their fears and insecurities.
Which makes you what?
Feed into their fears and insecurities.
But there has to be a relationship between you and them. It's not like you're talking to this abstract. This is your fears. It has to. They're viewing.
No,
him as
you're communicating in a way that they can hear it.
But there's a relationship.
You're a good communicator. You're making him laugh. You're giving him information.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter whether the information is true or not. You're giving him information. You're making him laugh.
Right.
And from his perspective, all he cares about is, I need them to believe me and follow me.
And what does he need to do for that to occur?
Be charismatic, which is what he is.
By doing what? So he has to have no tangible effect on the people. Like, he has to be doing something. Like, he can't just go in there and no game plan. I don't want him to believe in me. Like, he has to.
No. That's where the communication comes in. And that's why I say the communication and the charisma are two different things. Charisma got him on the stage.
So
communication kept him there.
So you're saying by the time he actually starts talking, there's no charisma involved?
It's not that there's no charisma involved. The charisma is there. It doesn't leave. But charisma got him on the stage.
So how is that somehow separate from
He could have gotten himself on the stage with charisma and totally not been a good communicator. And he would have failed miserably.
So how is communication being separate from how is charisma? How can you separate charisma, which is a form of communication, it's a style of communication?
See, that's your definition. I disagree with that. And I guess that's where we're having the disconnect. I have communication and charisma as two separate things.
So, okay, and I'll break things down more fundamentally. If you're a consciousness and I'm a consciousness, how can I ever know what's going on in your head without communicating to me?
You can't. You have to communicate somewhere or another.
So how can charisma be perceived without communication?
Unless you're talking about the energetic exchange, and if you want to call that energetic exchange communication, that's fine. But then that falls outside of what you said communication was, the balance between entertaining and education.
What's an example of energetic exchange?
Without communication.
Like I said, you walk into a room and you can tell who's in charge. You walk into a room and there's an automatic, without saying a word to somebody, you feel a pull. There's an energetic attachment that we have. And what I'm saying is charisma comes from that energetic pull, not the communication pull.
When I hear energetic like that, I think of if someone, a sound guy is coming in. Yeah, sound guy comes in, goes behind the scenes, like an energetic, meaning, if he's a mutant, Superman, Magneto, whatever, and puts out some energy vibration that you feel. That's what I hear when I hear no communication. When I think of what I'm hearing you say is someone entering the room based on literally, which brings in the sub-communication. Like, they don't necessarily say anything, but how they interact with the busboy is nodding at them. He's just giving a nod. His chest is out. He's checking the corner. Like, there's still communication being made, even if he hasn't opened it.
Let me ask you this way then. Have you ever been in a room and felt somebody walking behind you?
The presence, proximity, like hearing?
Not hearing. Just felt somebody walking behind you.
Like, physically? I mean, I can feel somebody's presence without them touching me. So that's what you're saying. They're just... Right.
That's the energy that you feel. You don't have to turn around. You don't have to hear anything. You don't have to know they're there.
But that's not charisma. That's somebody's presence.
No, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about energy. You can have energy and not charisma. I'm saying that charisma comes from mastering that energy. consciously or subconsciously. Usually it's subconsciously.
The energy is what exactly?
The energy is, you mentioned aura. It's our natural aura that we feel, that we give off, and that we feel, and that we exchange.
So
and
why
that we
isn't
dance
everybody,
with.
if that's the case, then everybody's giving that off. So why isn't
Absolutely.
everybody charismatic?
Because some people have a different way of interacting with that energy, their own energy. If you're suppressing your own energy, if you're not confident in who you are in your own energy, then your energy gives off a different pull. Everybody does give off energy.
So as assuming you're confident, and all
Assuming,
those,
let's
all
just say,
those things
assuming
are
you
met.
have natural charisma, which I call natural, or magnetism.
Well, it's assuming all that is met, then it doesn't matter how the person technically communicates; they'll always be charismatic because the energy condition has been met.
Yes.
That's
That's
interesting.
how I feel it. Like, if you have charisma, you have charisma. Now,
No
as
matter
you get
how
older,
your communications go. Right?
no matter how your communication goes,
That's interesting.
I can walk in a room and people are naturally attracted to have a conversation with me, naturally attracted to find out who I am, naturally attracted to follow me. I can open my mouth and fuck it all up.
And it doesn't matter because you're charismatic.
Oh, it does matter. It'll totally turn them off. It doesn't change the fact that I'm charismatic.
Really?
I can still engage with them.
So they decided you were charismatic before you spoke, and then after you spoke.
Actually, let me back that up. I would say that the charisma magnetism is what attracts people to you.
Mm-hmm.
Communication keeps them engaged.
And so, if the communication skills aren't good, you can be defined as charismatic
Mm-hmm.
without talking or
Mhm.
without sub communication or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
like
still
say
not
you're standing
get people to
So let's just
Follow
do the
you.
extreme. Right, let's just do the extreme. No sub communication whatsoever. No nodding. No wearing a Italian suit. No sub. Just a guy standing in the corner, sort of. But his aura is charismatic from what you're saying. And so people would just know that guy standing in the corner is charismatic, and then go and engage with them. His communication skills are trash, and they leave saying his communication skills are trash. But he was charismatic, though.
there was something about him I liked.
You think that happens?
Oh, absolutely, it happens.
I have a question for that.
But something about him I liked. I just,
So say if,
or the guy who the girls flock to, and it's like, damn, he had to open his mouth.
That's not charisma. That's looks.
Well,
so hypothetical, is this possible? In that scenario, what I hear, say he's got a smart vacuum going around, and in the device is, I don't know, a particular stone or whatever, gives off energy, makes people feel good. Is it possible for that inanimate device giving off an energy to be charismatic? By the context of it's just an energy with no communication, but if that energy is present, is that what I'm hearing? That the charisma is coming solely from the energy, which in that case is not even quantifiable to
Any form of action. Right.
people, even. Like if you can get the energy in these beads and put it on whatever.
if you could put the energy, that magnetism, into something else, hypothetically, I would say, yeah.
Like a charismatic rock.
You can have a charismatic rock. There are people who are attracted to
invent that.
different stones. Like, you ever, I don't know, you go into a crystal shop. They say pick
I
the
hear
stone that you're attracted to.
Yeah.
You wave your hand over the stone, you feel the energy of the stones, you pick the one that calls to you.
Okay.
There's an attraction there as well. And that's not.
attraction is different. Again, magnetism and charisma aren't like somehow locked into each other. You can have a magnetism to you for a lot of reasons that has nothing to do with your charisma. Like magnetism, if a woman, say a really beautiful woman, great body, beautiful face, wearing a bright yellow dress on a summer day, She has a lot of magnetism. Doesn't mean she's charismatic.
I wouldn't say that's magnetism. She has a lot of things that will attract people to her visually.
That's
different. That's not magnetism to me, though.
But you can't. This just like magnetism by definition is attracting stuff to you. But you can't just change.
So you're saying that magnetism is anything that captures your attention.
No, magnetism is the force by which things attract stuff to itself.
So you say the force, but then you gave a bunch of visual cues.
So that's whatever. So that person. Now we can go into
because by that definition, that light attracts my attention because it's a bright light. Does that make it magnetic? Does that light have magnetism?
If you're moving towards it for some reason. The men that see her, there's one thing if you look at her and go, that's your attention. Oh, okay, that's a beautiful woman. If you feel compelled to move towards her, that's magnetism.
Okay, I would agree with that. But then that has nothing to do with her dress or the color she's wearing.
Well,
the colors she's wearing are what got your attention as far as eyesight goes.
Not necessarily. The type of men that go, let's say she's wearing her hair in a particular way that magnetizes a particular kind of man. It's not. So
I would agree with that. That wasn't necessarily the example you were giving when you were talking about what she was wearing, but I get that.
But I didn't know I had to say like not every man on planet Earth is rushing to her.
Well, what was missing was that the rushing to part. That you actually have to move toward her. There are certain looks will attract certain people. Certain people are magnetic to certain other people.
Right. And so that I'm use the context of that
and from that perspective, okay, I can get that. Magnetism and charisma would be two different things.
But I use that example since women are the things that magnetize. Probably like as far as things we can practically think of, women magnetize far more than men in terms of getting approached, right? Particularly a woman who's considered beautiful by most. So I'm saying in that case, she has magnetism. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean she's charismatic.
Correct.
Right.
By that definition, I would agree with you.
And so, in a context like that, there are a lot of things that are causing people to magnetize her. If you asked every guy, it's a different answer.
It'd be a different answer.
Right.
I saw the dress, I saw the feet, I saw the hair.
Right. Nice ass, whatever. And so, with a charismatic person, actually, you know what, let's use, because a woman can be charismatic. Mm-hmm. So, let's add on top of her that she's charismatic as well. How would you distinguish that? From never her, she didn't speak ever, or never interacted with anybody else.
How would I distinguish that?
Her magnetism.
Her magnetism versus her charisma. Mm-hmm. That would be all nonverbal cues.
What would be?
How she engaged with the room.
That would when her charisma would kick in?
That's where I would notice. That's where I would say she either has charisma or doesn't by the way she's engaging with the room.
But how come that's different now? That's communication.
And that's what I'm going back to. That's a sub form of communication.
Okay, so you now think, after thinking about it, that charisma does have some form of communication to it. It's not.
I think, and this is what I said earlier. Mm-hmm. I think it all blends in together. Charisma is still, to me, the natural, energetic pull of something. Communication builds on that. They're not the same thing.
So why would you need the woman to interact to determine her charisma then? Isn't that just determining her communication skills?
No, because again, going back to you can have communication skills and not have charisma.
Right. So what I'm asking you, how would you determine that she's
There are
charismatic?
people who could go in and do exactly what she's doing.
But I'm asking you.
I understand.
Right.
I'm not answering. Mm-hmm. There are people who could go, there are women who can go into that room and do exactly what she was doing and still not have the same level of charisma.
But how would you be able to know that without them communicating?
Even if they were communicating, they could go in the room, they communicate, they could do exactly the same things.
But I'm asking if both women are equally beautiful. One had more charisma and one did not. But none of them communicated with anybody.
If neither of them communicated and both of them moved through the room the same way.
Why would they need to move? It's not about them moving. It's about drawing.
If both of them engage with the room the same way. Because that's what we're talking about.
No, we're talking charisma. You said a rock can be charismatic if it had the aura.
A rock can have attraction.
Right. So you're conflating. You're like merging.
I'm saying that there's an energetic pull.
Okay.
That is the base of charisma. Let's say it that way. Communication can foster that. It can build on that. Communication at best communication is a part of charisma. If you have good communication and you have this energy, all of that feeds into charisma. My point is, communication and charisma are not linked, are not together, because you can be a good communicator and not have charisma. I'm not saying that you can tell if somebody has charisma with only the energy. Some people can. You can tell somebody walks in the room without looking at them, you can feel their energy. Period. The person who walks in with the yellow dress and blah, 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 just looking at her without her doing anything, you can't tell whether people are looking at her because she looks good or because she has charisma. You have no idea. You can tell there's an attraction there. There are people moving toward her because she's attractive, because she has a bright yellow dress on, because she's a peacock in the room. But that doesn't mean she has charisma. It means she has an attraction.
Okay.
Now, inside of the communication and the energy, all of that, let me say it this way. If you have the charismatic energy and communication skills, all of that builds into the total package. You can have charisma. You can have that energetic attraction where you walk into a room and people can notice you, and have zero communication skills. Or you can have communication skills and not have that energy. The communication skills themselves don't equal charisma. You see what I'm saying?
What are communication skills?
What you define as communication skills, the balance between entertaining and education.
That's not what I said communication skills, right? I said that's what charisma was.
I want to pause.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you were speaking about communication when you said that, though.
Yeah, because charisma is communication.
And I disagree with that.
Right. So I've got 30 minutes left. I want to.
Sorry.
Oh, damn,
We going on.
it's been almost an hour again.
I didn't even realize that.
I was about to, so we can take the time, I would say, go into what I heard with the initial question. We also, so we can move from, we've got our interpretations of charisma, and is it of use? I remember was the pose. Is it of value to a man, or does it matter if a man has charisma? So I say we can circle back to that.
Totally got offside on that one.
Take that the last 30 minutes of the conversation. I honestly think we can take the focus and attention. It was interesting what this conversation was focused on. But I like that topic, and if we can take charisma into an hour, I know we can dive into that. Let's take be the next episode, and that's my thought.
The focusing. Okay, so since it's 30 minutes, let's just. So you're asking now about the charisma and how it impact. It being communication, at least speaking from personal experience or experience or teaching it or observing those who get results. I've managed to quickly establish in my earlier days very solid business relationships to people that, and this is something I hear a lot, and I didn't know when I was 22, and most of my circle were, 45 plus. Like I didn't have anybody near my age for a long time, and I'd be sitting down having these convos with them, and I'd say about half a dozen of them would say an equivalent of, you're one of 5 people I talk to. Mm-hmm. And in my head, I'm thinking like, really, I don't feel like I did anything in particular when we met initially. This was way before understanding all this. And when I reflect back, asking friends of mine, because in putting this workshop together, I asked different people. Remember, I asked you like, what were things that you think would be of value if I tried to share that with other guys? And the charisma piece, as far as not the word itself, but the ability to quickly establish a connection with a person to where the relationship lasts. Mm-hmm. So if it's for business, right, going back to, is this helpful? Obviously for women it's great. But if I'm talking about from more of a financial standpoint, I have a quote, everything you desire is on the other side of a good relationship. Mm. So if you don't have the ability to establish good relationships quickly, then you're at a massive disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And so if we're in the same room, most people go into a room and go, what can I get from everybody in this room? And so as they go to each person, they're scanning through their questions, through their style of communication. Let me see if you can do something for what I got going on. And how I had flipped that switch, which adds to that, is I would go into every conversation only listening for what I can do for them. And so the convo would be centered on essentially what the fuck they got going on, and not be filtering through my mind. Do I have a contact? Do I have a book? Do I have a direct customer? And obviously towards the end, after 15 minutes of talking about yourself and your goals, the natural thing to go is like, well, what do you got going on? Well, you briefly mentioned something. Oh my God, such and such. But you leave that conversation thinking that was a cool guy. Hmm. Versus another motherfucker that tried to shove my car down their throat. I don't give a fuck if you work for Primerica, my nigga. Like, you know what I'm saying? Nothing wrong with Primerica, but the experience of you're the 50th motherfucker that give me a Primerica card this week. Why you and not any of the others, right? And so that charisma piece, going in there with the intent of, because there are 2 things that people seek to express themselves and to feel understood. Because I can be yabbering at you and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not going to leave that conversation feeling great about it, because you're like, that guy didn't get me. And if so that's expressing it for yourself. But if you don't, that's actually feeling understood, because you're expressing yourself. So you're meeting one half of it, but you don't feel understood. But you can also not get the opportunity to express yourself because I'm talking too much, right? And so you don't even get to, because expressing yourself comes before being understood. But there's sometimes you get the opportunity, like, what the fuck? I'm a fucking Republican. You're whatever the shit was. You're like, I never want to talk to that guy again, right? But you can also just never get the chance, because it's like, yeah, whatever. So what I'm trying to do is, and then you're like, well, I don't want to talk to that person again because I didn't even get to share what the fuck I got going on. So that is always occurring in every convo. And so if you can balance it, if I go to a person and give them the opportunity for both, I'm saying, if you're honest, what's the biggest thing you think you want right now? Why are you even at this event? They're like, what is the biggest thing on it? Okay, so what do you think is the biggest blocker for that now? And it's not just for conversation's sake, it's genuine intent to help them. If you can, right? Whether again through a contact or whatever. And they're like, I'm like, okay. So and then if I restate it So it's this, and this. Yeah. Immediate understanding. If that's all you did, you're there for every person in that that room.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because you just had them go through the two things. They expressed themselves and they felt understood. So you're whatever you want just from doing that. Oh man, like they'll bend over hand and foot to help you. So a lot of the people that I interacted with were, high profile people. If you were going to talk just money, I never went with the intent of I'm trying to get in your circle because I was bringing value anyway. I wasn't necessarily going to leech from you. And it just, for happenstance, when I was younger, I'd get in a lot of those circles, get invited to everything under the sun because their experience with me is Vidal looks to bring stuff to the table whenever we meet. Even if I don't need shit from him. No, it's 22. Like, I'm well established in my shit. But that intent of, I don't give a fuck if I don't have 10 mil to offer you for a deal. I'm still always looking to bring value in whatever way that looks. And for a person like that, it might just be a fucking companion or just the ability to talk to somebody who's willing to listen or something, whatever the thing is. But that charisma, the current obviously being played, using the same, being playful while being discussing whatever, that's always at play because that's just my personality style. I don't like to be too and I'm not going to be clownish either. So it's okay. And then from there, again, just contact after contact. And to kind of wrap it up, I thought about him, like, what is it? Why don't I like this guy? Not in like at the base level, don't like him as a human being, but what is he doing wrong? He came up to me and I couldn't care less what his card was about. Like, what about that? And I'd go to networking events all the time. And then I thought about it as like, when certain people come up, their intent is purely, what can you do for me? And it's oozing off them. And the moment, what do you do? Okay, here's my card. And it's like, realistically, why in God's name would I take your card with any real serious consideration? Right, I don't even remember your name. You didn't ask my, even if it did, oh, you're Bob, all right, cool. And it's like, dude, right? And so,
you're hungry,
man, and that's fair. Like, it's just you can't expect people to want to do all this stuff for you, and you offer no value.
Thirsty is never attractive,
and that's definitely not the case in business. It's definitely not the case in relationship, but it applies there too. So that's just been my experience of being able to quickly establish high-profile relationships, like easily, like within 10 minutes. Their secretary, I've never seen him talk to somebody that long. Literally, this would be like, how did you get invited to that? I didn't even know. And it's like I couldn't answer it back then, but now after studying like how humans work as far as actual communication, I'm like, okay, it's the give and take, but give heavy first. And then do your ask later if you have something that you want.
That actually, I'm glad you said that, all of that, because, I'm in IT, so my contract is coming to an end soon, so I'm starting to look again. I haven't looked in a while. But you presence me to something that's always been there, is being able to hear what other people want. I always tell people, yeah, I'm in IT, but what I do is I solve problems for people.
Right.
So every conversation I have with a client, every interview I go to, it's always about, what do you need and how can I solve your problem with technology?
Right.
How can I fit in and help you with what your needs are? And if I can, I'm fine with that. I'll leave. But 9 times out of I can. And to your point, once you engage people in talking about themselves, whether it's a woman or a business, you're in.
Love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, you will be remembered. You will stand out. I've been working in corporate America for over 30 years, and 9 times out of 10, I'm the only black person in the room, and I got stories. But having charisma and good communication skills.
You're going to die in that shit. I hope you got a life.
Always works. Now, to that point though, I've always had good communication skills. I have not always had what I would consider charisma, especially when I was starting out.
I personally don't think charisma and good communication skills are just like, you can be like, if you're educating somebody, you can be a phenomenal educator, not be charismatic. Like, they can get it. I would say you're a good communicator then, but I don't say you're charismatic. But charisma isn't separate from communication.
See, communication skills, and I don't want to go back down that road again, but communication skills to me is being able to, what you said, find that balance between entertaining and educating.
So if you don't do that, you're not a good communicator? If they get the data, but you're boring?
Yes, you're not a good communicator. You might be a decent educator, but you're not a good communicator. I think the only way you're a good communicator is if people hear you and want to hear you.
Does a man need that, and does that make a difference?
A man, depending on the man, does not need that. Everybody's got different levels of game.
What about charisma?
You don't need charisma if you got good game. If you have charisma, I would argue that that is part of your game. But you don't need the same level of effort in game.
If you have charisma.
If you have charisma. So, for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. Any average Joe can get a girl without charisma. He just has to have decent game. Or at least manage to pull up his game in that moment to get the girl.
So would it be possible then to have game, like you're saying, no charisma, or charisma without game? Like, can they?
I don't know if you can have charisma without game, because charisma in itself gets you results, should get you results. You know, if you have charisma and you can communicate, that's going to get you everything you want.
So is game communication?
Game is communication. Game is communication. In this context, game is communication. Now, what that communication may not be verbal, it could be whatever you want, but whatever works for you. You know? Dude can be a shitty communicator, but his game is to pull out a 15-inch dick every time. You know, he ain't gotta have communication skills for women.
Is that game or marketing?
It's marketing. But that's his game. And that's all game is how you market yourself, though. That's all any game is how you market yourself.
It's synonymous, game and charisma. And maybe another dissecting.
See, I don't think game and charisma are the same thing.
No.
Because like I said, if Idris Elba doesn't have to have game. He can get what he wants by walking in the room, whether it's business or women. He gets what he wants, period. Now, I don't know if that's charisma either. That's just him being who he is. But he doesn't have to have game or charisma. He's a famous person.
But that's a common goal. Like, he has something they want.
Agreed. But that's not necessarily charisma. That's not necessarily game.
Oh yeah, again, I don't think that communication skills and charisma have to be tied together, right? Like, meaning you can be a good communicator and not be charismatic, right? I can think of a million people who are far from charismatic, but you're like, dang. Like Jordan Peterson, I wouldn't put Jordan in a charismatic context. That's not what I'd label him as, but Jordan is an excellent communicator, right? And so they are distinguishable. I'd say Tate is more charismatic.
I would agree with that.
But they're both good communicators, right?
Right.
And so, but they both get the outcomes. The one has a different flavor to their communication. One Tate is Jordan's more serious Tate is more Tate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Please dissect Jordan. I think that's a good example because what came to mind first when you said that, I'm thinking about his clips, and there are times where he breaks off from the information he's saying and says a joke, and people laugh.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm thinking too, but is he charismatic?
Nah, you know when he goes it's like, well, you know.
Exactly.
That's not like, hey, that's a charismatic motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's not what you think.
He's got delivery though. He's got delivery down. But he's got that communication down.
Yeah, I think he's a great communicator, but charismatic Jordan Peterson, that's not something I pair together. Now there is, I didn't want to bring this one up because I haven't had a distinction for it yet, but there is, I don't think that he's this either. And I don't think Tate's this. I can't think of an example. But there's charm seems to be a slight mixture, right? So charm seems to be a bit different, but it's not. It's more subtle.
Charming versus charismatic.
It's literally the core of the word.
Yeah, charm. I don't know if we have charm time. It's 12 minutes left. But I avoided bringing it up.
Yeah.
But when you said the thing, Jordan, that moment of like the little joke, I wouldn't say he's charming necessarily, but it's closer to charm than charisma. Charisma seems to have like a bit of a flair. Like, is there a flair to the thing?
If you're charismatic, you're a leader. People are going to follow you. That's how I have it.
Okay.
Charm has people engaged with you.
I think they both have people engaged, but I see.
No, they both do. Absolutely. They both have people engaged. Charm doesn't necessarily get people to follow you. It just has people engaged with you.
Charm, the power or quality of giving delight or arousing admiration. Verb, delight greatly.
You know what comes to mind when I think of charm? Like, seems to
TV
be like
show?
I actually didn't think of that. But smooth. Like, there's an element. Charisma to me doesn't have to be smooth, but charm has a.
Charm is the kiss in the hand,
But that's a one kind of, but like a smoothness to the vibe versus, like if I were to try to be charming versus charismatic, like charismatic would be the joking about pulling the hair, like that'd be more kind of up against, like a bit more unconstrained. When I think of charmed, like today, this person I was interacting with. Yeah, so in the setting I typically see her, I usually am there at the end of the day, right? Like towards the end. And I happened to be there earlier today, hence the attire. And I guess she had just gotten there. And when I was talking to her, she greeted me. Her eyes seemed a bit more like there was more life in them, right? And I looked at her and I was like, "You had a really good day today, didn't you?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Your eyes have like a different kind of sparkle in them than usual. Like, as you just, right." But I was dead serious. But I wouldn't put that, I mean, you could put that in charismatic, but it was like a more sincere, is a slightly different kind of energy to there was no agenda. I mean, I see her all the time, and I would need to do that.
What I would say, given that, and I actually agree with you, charm has I care about what you're saying. I care about who you are and what's going on in this moment. I have to pay attention to you to be charming. I don't have to pay attention to you to be charismatic.
Yeah, that might be a good distinction. Charm seems to be one-on-one. I don't know if you can be. Maybe
you can be charming in a group, but that's not really where it falls. You can be charismatic with an individual, but that's not really where it falls. What I think you were going is charisma is about group dynamics, how you interact with a group. Charm is more along the lines of how you're interacting with an individual. And not to say that there's no overlap, but charming is I'm caring about you. I care about you. I notice your eyes.
Yeah, there's a level of cariness to charm, whereas charisma is not necessarily. There's a level of again, smooth is the word that keeps coming to mind, but I don't want to use the time to try to make a distinction for smooth, right? But it is something because there's a different feeling. We can all say, okay, that's charming, that's not, that's charismatic, that's neither, but good communicator. Like, so it's certainly again, an experience like, it's charming, right? Or if you just charm, when I think of charm, it's like strong intent to make you feel good. Like, oh, you really put some effort in there. I really like how you put that together today. And she, oh my God,
opening doors, hands on the small of the back, noticing their eyes, noticing asking them about their day.
Right.
When you don't really, they're not your girl, but you're still asking them, or your person, and you're asking them.
To that, because the examples that came to mind for me were women always expressing, like it's always women expressing that he was so charming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, even all the examples we're speaking to, is charm an exudance of masculine or what men portray, or
I think men can be charming to women. So that's
that whole charming.
She charmed the pants off me.
They ain't no
or so
I
charming.
ain't never heard of Princess Charming.
That's fucking good. In 2023, though.
Right? There's a Disney movie coming out soon.
Prince Charming yesterday.
Princess Charming.
Today.
Oh, we're gonna get flagged.
And you can't.
That's a whole other conversation you ain't gotta get into.
But it is. But that's a really good point. Charm, and I think that might be the core. If there was one distinction between them, it seems to be purely men to women. It's like that direction only.
Women can be charismatic, but not charming.
Right, like a woman, she was so charming. Like that's not. It seems to be a man to woman experience. So only women can say whether a man is charming or not.
That's never one of the edit cuts. It's like, okay, we gotta put this out. I just want to hear what the world has to say about can women be charming?
Yes, there was this charming young lady yesterday.
So somebody will say, yeah. I want to hear the context though, because
I don't think men can be charmed. That's because could a woman say charming or what other woman? I could see maybe she's saying another.
Men are
woman is
enamored.
Charming. Charmed is more
We're
of
not charmed.
Well, the bringing delight, power or quality of giving delight or arousing admiration. Because masculine being delighted.
That's
like you're saying, enamored, enchanted. But
I've been delighted by women before. I'm just saying.
That was delightful.
Delightful.
That's the last time Lewis ever saw that woman again.
Right?
Girl, you said that was delightful.
Delightful.
That's what I knew. I had to block her.
I had one woman ghost me because I called my mother Mama.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Mommy,
Yeah.
I would definitely get ghosted for delightful.
That was a delightful bullshit. I was like, yeah, I don't like that.
I would just to weigh in my part. Does it make a difference for a man to be charismatic? Aligned with the same thing you were saying, the context out in life. I think I had a distinction before manpower. I think for masculine to be asserted, like when you really want to move and shape things, put your impression out into the world, which is masculine's goal to leave legacy, to have made a difference while you were here. I think absolutely have to be charming with the ladies, charismatic in general with people, makes the difference for business, network, power, status, like every aspect, I do believe. Because
I've never walked into an interview and said I need to be charming. You're right.
The conversation we had,
I can see that.
That first date interview. What were we talking about? I lost it. No, you're good. It was something winners and losers. Like there's a charisma too, same scenario, and a context of I can still win or just still having something to take it on. I don't think a loser is going to be charismatic, and I think that is the difference. Like, it's a factor. I won't say like it's anything that is a catalyst of, and it can definitely be the difference of when looking at the question, does it make a difference for a man? Well, if he does not have charisma, attracting, being liked, being like others, all those factors are going to be against, and he's likely going to experience losing that repelling of pushing away opportunities, options, anything, manifesting dreams into reality, putting phones on vibrate.
Right.
I forgot I
It
put
does
that
make
on
me
for
think
an hour.
that as a final sort of point from y'all, if we're gonna say Jordan Tate communicate well, just from a two popular men who focused on empowering men, what do you think Jordan could get away? Maybe not get away with is the right word, but influence people to do that maybe Tate couldn't, or Tate could influence people to do that Jordan couldn't. People being, I guess we could say all people, but charisma versus non-charisma were two great communicators. What's the real payoff of Tate being perceived as charismatic? Is it causing him to move a different demographic? Is it you know what I mean? Like, what's the real payoff of one having it over the other?
Charisma will attract both male and female energies.
And so you're saying Jordan is less likely to attract a female audience because he's just, the style of communication is different.
He's less likely to attract both. I don't know. It depends on who he's targeting. If he's a good communicator and he's targeting men, that's who he's going to attract. If he's a good communicator and targeting women, that's who he's going to attract. That's who he's marketing himself toward.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's charismatic, doesn't matter who he targets, both will fall in.
I see.
I would say Jordan. I could see Jordan Peterson getting society to move on fact of the U.S. or Western society is going to be looking like the Asia if we don't get this fixed in relation. Like, he could break down the facts that this is why we need to repair the family dynamic. This is how it's infecting society. That education he would hit the broader and get, and would be more effective. I see, and about appropriately so, Andrew Tate would get his followers and believers to like sell their soul for him, like be online for whatever business, wherever he puts them towards, getting it. Only the people that like him, though. It's so polarizing, where that would say the charisma is, for that example, because it is so polarizing. Those who can't hear his message, don't like him, don't care for him. He would not get the mass to get behind it, because it's not going to be in the education. It's the entertaining. If I'm not entertained, well, fuck off.
Well, it is important. Like that last piece, I think, is just layering on charisma by its nature is polarizing, right? And so, I mean, if you think of all the people you mentioned, the Hitlers, the Trumps, the Tates, within charisma is the unapologetically sort of, and in that you, by definition, have to kind of part the sea. Whereas with Jordan, if he's just focusing on like the facts, so to speak, is the only problem is if you disagree with the facts versus, I mean, you can go after Jordan. There's always going to be that, but as you said, like in a real state of crisis, are people Jordan had said that one thing, like in real crisis, right? Like people will, well, this is a time for moving forward, you know, and people are very likely to listen from a, what he's saying makes sense. That's how they're listening. Whereas Tate is like, if we're saying we should all move forward, it's like, fuck you, bro. You know, it's more.
Are you saying charisma, by definition, is polarizing?
I think it's always going to polarize, yes.
Charisma will always polarize.
Yeah.
And I would say to that, the caveat, where the charisma is still valued or honored, is that even those that are pushed off, there's still the back end of the shadow side of likeness to see a human being fully express and not give a fuck.
For sure.
Because you will always hear, but I gotta respect him. I don't like what he's saying, but I can respect him.
I don't agree with him, but I respect him. That's why I don't think charisma has to be polarizing. I look at, from a presidential perspective, your John F. Kennedys, your Bill Clintons, your Obamas. Now, don't get me wrong. There will always, just because you're not polarizing doesn't mean everybody's going to like you or agree with you.
So how do you know
But polarizing to me means by definition, you're pushing people away consciously. Like you're making an effort to push people away.
I don't think so. If you're standing on your rock, you're going to polarize. Unless you're not. I see what you're saying, and when I think of, unless the person is intentionally trying to not stand too firmly on a position with the aim of galvanizing.
If the goal is to bring everybody together, then you're not going to get everybody. I'm not saying you will at all.
That's not even what I'm saying. I mean, because let's say we use Bill Clinton's polarizing. I mean, charisma versus Tate's. Like Tate stands on his square, like religiously, right? And so when you're that kind of,
correct,
you know what I mean? Like it's
when you're rigid, you're going to be polarizing. It has nothing to do with charisma. It has to do with how firmly you are standing on your spot.
I can see your point on that.
You know, it's if you can be charismatic and trying to talk to everybody, and I mean, and there's an opposite of that too, where you're just completely ineffective because you can't please everybody. But yeah, Donald Trump is polarizing because he stands very firmly, unmovingly on a particular spot.
I'd have to think more on that, but I can see how, like when I think of I wasn't around for Bill Clinton, and to see the actual, right? Because people can go in 20 years in the future. Oh, Trump was the last Clinton, like the way they, depending on who you were talking to. So I don't know, but I can think of a style of communication where nobody's coming to mind, but like a more let's all get along sort of style of charisma. Again, I wish I could think of somebody.
I'm trying to think of somebody too in the entertainment world or someplace.
I mean, yeah, I could see, but even then, again, it's who you talk to.
Kobe Bryant, he was very non-polarizing. Michael Jordan, very non-polarizing.
I'd say Kobe was on his square like a motherfucker, but it was on, I think, for things that, looking back, most people can respect, but I don't know if in the moment.
And I think that's just it. People respect. Well, fair enough. Though, yeah. So yeah, there were some parts where he was definitely polarizing. He made choices unapologetically. He made choices that people did not get behind. I still don't know if I'd say that was as polarizing as much as it was an entire city of people just didn't agree with his choices. Because most people outside of the people who were directly affected still had mad respect for Kobe. Even the people in the city still had mad respect for Kobe. And that's what made them mad.
And with that, we got episode 4 in the bag. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen? Like, subscribe, notification bell. Stay tuned. Check out the last episodes. Highlights being shared. Any closing thoughts, fellas?
That was a delightful podcast.
Charming discussion.
Oh, my mommy sees this. That's all I got to say.